Good afternoon, everybody. A very warm welcome to participants who have joined for this session. This is session 4 of our Bodhan online course on statutory and regulatory compliances. I'm your host, Sharad Bhargav from Sathi Development Services. Today's session is on FCRA and the rules, the FC regulation rules, the FCRA Act of 2010 and the FCR rules 2011 as amended from time to time. So as far as FCRA is concerned, we have had a lot of exposure. So we will actually not be doing each section, but I will take you through key provisions of the rules and the act, and also on various forms and updates which are more important as of now. Uh, but we have a layout for the session. So the FCRA Act is the 2010 Act, when the 1976 Act of FCRA, which was enacted during the emergency in the country, was replaced with a brand new Act of 2010. Okay, and this 2010 Act has undergone a lot of change, and the rules have also undergone a lot of changes, with the result that the act is truly a regulation act. It's called the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. It's truly a regulatory provision in law, or a piece of law, which is more in terms of, strict guidance and actions for non-compliance or for anything which is not in line with the spirit of the law. Please remember, everything in the FCRA is not stated in the FCRA. Several things are in the FCR rules. Sometimes may not be part of the act, but then it is there. Sometimes a lot of provisions or procedures that are being implemented under FCRA are in the press releases, public notices, and sometimes even in the forms. So a provision like an NGO Darpan registration being mandatory for FCRA may not be there anywhere actually, except the form when you start filling it up. So what I'm trying to say is that uh, the guidance notes, the FAQs, the do's and don'ts, all those that are available on the FCRA website called fcraonline.nic.in is something that is has to be seen and understood. So it's not just reading, plain reading of the law that will give you a full flavor of the regulations, but also a lot of precedence, a lot of convention, a lot of information communication that has been subsequently also placed by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Please remember, the FCRA is governed by the Ministry of Home Affairs, being a matter for prohibition or for, regulation, not prohibition, regulation of some kind of foreign contribution, some kind of foreign hospitality, which the government wants to see is in the national interest. So the law is around what is in the nation's interest, and therefore as governments change, as governments evolve, the interpretation and the way the law takes the turn has also changed, with the result that presently the FCRA Act is very much like a regulatory piece of legislation, and the MHA is truly like a regulator for the Act. This has to be understood. Uh, I want to also say that as the MHA being the nodal ministry for the FCRA, there is very little in terms of interaction that is possible with the MHA, except through your, through your online submissions, as well as any tickets that you might raise on the help desk, which is in addition to the FCRA online platform now. Last year, probably in 2023, it was introduced. So we will have a look at that also. Now, this is the broad introduction for this law before we get into more details. Now, the layout of the session is something like this. We need to understand the purpose and the key concepts. Please remember that the definitions in FCRA are very crucial in terms of our understanding. And so some of the close to about 5 to 7 of the key concepts that are there need to be fully understood before we are able to actually uh, interpret the law in terms of what it means for these definitions. And these definitions are very peculiar to the FCRA law. The second one is the FCRA architecture. So we are going to actually see what the foundation is of FCRA. The third one is changes in the act and the rules. Okay, specifically, more specifically in 2020, and some updates that I have post that, but that will come in the updates that we have as a separate section. We have various forms for reporting, because please remember, everything that you need to do is online as far as the FCRA division of MHA is concerned. There is very little possibility of a meeting or an interaction with the FCRA division staff in the Ministry of Home Affairs. So that's something that needs to be understood. Therefore, our understanding of the law, our understanding of the provisions have to be such that we are not, either violating, uh, understanding the provisions correctly, so that whatever we want the ministry to do is done in that fashion. Our reporting has to be such that we are not considered to have violated any provisions of the law, because for every violation or an offense there is a penalty. Okay, so that is something that needs to be also very clearly understood. Now that penalty can lead to cancellation of our registration certificate, which means we will not be able to receive foreign contribution. Just as we have been talking about cancellation of our 12A registration, which is even more dangerous than the FCRA, because the FCRA cancellation, I'm not saying it should be cancelled, but the FCRA cancellation stops, or puts a window or a lid to one method of funding for the not-for-profits. However, the cancellation or not having a 12AB has much wider implications. So let's start with our session this as per this layout. Now, the purpose of the FCRA, and as I said, the purpose of FCRA is written down like this, but the way action has been taken by respective establishments or governments has changed its sharpness as time has evolved. So some governments probably took it more lightly. Some of them are more aggressive in terms of actions under the FCRA. Now that also has to do with the kind of economic growth and development that has happened. The view in the bureaucracy and government in terms of is foreign contribution, should it be considered as a main source of funding for the social investment in this country, or should we promote other ways? So that's changed. But however, the purpose of FCRA as laid down in the act is to regulate, I'm saying. So everywhere the word regulation is coming. Acceptance, it's not necessarily facilitation. So regulate acceptance and utilization. One, to accept or receive, and second is to utilize. At both points, there is a regulation. One, foreign contribution, second, foreign hospitality. What do these words mean? We will see that. But these are the two things that are regulated through this piece of regulation: foreign contribution and foreign hospitality. Foreign contribution, we sometimes call it as FC. Okay, by certain persons. So who are the persons who can accept and utilize foreign contribution and foreign hospitality? We will see that. So we must know what is a person. And the third is prohibit receipt and utilization of foreign contribution and hospitality if it is detrimental to national interest. So everything is related to anything which endangers the sovereignty and the national interest of this country is something that is the plea that will be taken for regulation to be put in place under the FCR. Okay. Now, coming to the key concepts and definitions, and this is important because we need to understand what these words, each of these mean. And I said we have at least about half a dozen of these words, which we will try to understand so that there is clarity in terms of understanding the provisions in the various in the act and the rules. So the first word is what is called FC, or foreign contribution. This means any donation, any delivery, mere delivery also will be of a foreign contribution, will be foreign contribution, or transfer directly or indirectly. So it comes from a foreign source, it comes through an intermediary from a foreign source, both are included. Okay, or to another person by any foreign source. So the foreign contribution has to come from a foreign source. That is the second point that we need to know. What is a foreign source? We will see that, because that will decide whether a source is foreign or local, and therefore whether it is within the FCRA Act or outside of the FCRA Act is of great concern or prime concern when we are dealing with funding for our organization. So foreign contribution is from a foreign source. What three things does it entail? One is any article. So if you get an article from a foreign source, uh, if it's a gift for personal use and the market value does not exceed 1 lakh, okay, so it has to be a gift for personal use. Now, organizations, if it's an individual, is also a person. Okay. So if it's an individual and he gets an article as a gift and the market value is not more than 1 lakh is the market value or the fair value that will have to be ascertained, then it's not foreign contribution. However, even if the article as a gift is more than 1 lakh rupees, then that article that has to be reported. However, as organizations, we do not get articles as personal gifts. So we will normally get all those articles as something which will be used by the organization for the community at large, not for their own personal use as a gift. So an article is a foreign contribution. So kinds supply is foreign contribution and it has to be reported. Okay. Second thing, do we report kinds supply or kinds contribution in our annual return in FC4? We will see FC4 and we will see whether it gets reported as kind supply or not, as article. The second is currency. Okay, so that is foreign contribution is getting any currency or any, for instance, in India, it's the INR, in US, it's dollar, and those are the currencies. And the color of the currency is not material. Okay, please remember the color of the currency is not material. Now, what does that mean? Okay, that whether it is an Indian currency or a foreign currency, both of them can be foreign contribution. So if you get something by way of, Indian rupees, you will not say that this is local contribution. If you get local in INR from a foreign source, then it will, then irrespective of whether you have got INR and not dollars from a foreigner, for instance, a US citizen, even then that currency is a foreign contribution. Please remember that. So as I said, the color of the currency is not of any importance. What is of importance is what is the source of that currency or the contribution that is being made by that person, being made. What is that source? So everything you will see boils down to what is the source of that contribution, and that's very important to understand. The third is any securities as defined in the SCRA, the Securities Contract Regulation Act of 1956. So if you get any securities that also from a foreign source, that also will be a foreign contribution. Generally, kind supply and currency is what we get. However, I'm not saying we don't get. Some of the INGOs might get some ways of getting securities from their foreign source in a certain sense. But generally, articles and currency are the two types of items that are coming as foreign contribution. Is everything foreign contribution that will come by way of article currency? The explanation has been provided in the section number 2, which is the definition section, which says that any amount received in normal course of business from a foreign source is not foreign contribution. So if there is a consideration involved, if there is in the ordinary course of business, for instance, they've said if you get any fees from a foreign student for being able to give them education in India, is there foreign contribution? The answer is no. Cost in lieu of goods or services, so, which is in the normal course of business. So basically that will go to the Fcra route and not the Fcra route. So anything which is done by way of a commercial contract in the ordinary course of business is not within the purview of foreign contribution. Okay, or getting any monies from an agent of a foreign source towards any cost or fee shall not be foreign contribution. So this is something one needs to understand. However, as we see what is a person and what are the conditions that have to be fulfilled by a person to be able to say this is foreign contribution, in the next slide, it will make things clearer. However, let's understand that there are two ways in which foreign contribution is accounted for or received. One is the primary receipt of foreign contribution from a foreign source directly as a first time receipt. Okay. Now that's foreign contribution. However, any income that gets generated on that foreign contribution is also deemed foreign, is also foreign contribution, which I call as deemed foreign contribution. So you have primary foreign receipt of foreign contribution and you have secondary receipt of or deemed foreign contribution, which also is to be reported as foreign contribution. Please remember that. Any interest that you get, any rent that you get, any other incomes that you get, sub-grant is not allowed. So earlier sub-grants were allowed. They were all considered to be in the nature of foreign contribution. So having seen what the definition of foreign contribution is, let's go to the definition of foreign hospitality. Now, foreign hospitality means availing of any facility from a foreign source, okay, for the cost of travel of any person to any foreign country in terms of boarding, lodging, transportation, or medical treatment. So for anything like this, boarding, lodging, transportation, or medical treatment. Now, we have situations where foreign hospitality may be extended under a project, okay, which is an FC project and funded through a foreign source. That is foreign hospitality. The foreign hospitality may be extended by the foreign source directly, or it could be extended by the person who has received foreign contribution. Both cases, it will be considered as foreign hospitality because what's involved is foreign contribution from a foreign source. Now, who are covered for foreign hospitality? Now, these, the ones that I've mentioned, members of a legislature, office bearers of political parties, judges, government servants, and public servants. Okay, so that's the big list. Employees of any corporation or company owned by the government. There are specified, you know, exclusions also in this category, but generally these are the kind of people. So basically what we are saying, anybody who's working for anything connected with government, please remember a public servant includes any person who's drawing any remuneration by working for the government. The definition of public servant as far as Fcra is concerned is governed by the Indian Penal Code's section 21. And the public servants list I am not attaching here, but it is a fairly big list of people who work directly on the rolls or indirectly in some contractual capacity. They are all public servants as far as the definition of public servant that has been borrowed in Fcra is concerned. Now, if foreign hospitality needs to be availed by these people for boarding, lodging, transportation, or medical treatment outside of India by using funds which are foreign contribution and provided by a foreign source, then you have to seek approval from the ministry 2 weeks before embarking on that journey. And if during the period of journey you have a medical emergency or medical aid is required, and if it's more than 1 lakh rupees, then after you have come back within 60 days, you will have to seek approval. So it's these people who will have to get approval. So who gets the approval for foreign hospitality? The person who is availing the hospitality has to get the approval. So you have to ensure that the person who is availing or who's being provided foreign hospitality is the person who will get the approval, give it to you or give it to the foreign source, and then the foreign source should initiate foreign hospitality for such categories of persons. Okay, very important. So we've seen the definition of foreign contribution and foreign hospitality. I am not referring to any act or any rules. Foreign hospitality as such will have a specific rule in the FCRR, but that's no point in doing that. The entire presentation doesn't have too much reference to the act or rules. We are trying to understand the provisions. Okay, so when we are working on our desk, and if there is such a situation, then we will go to the act and the rules. But we will first refer to our presentation and say, well, are we getting caught in this? Are we getting hooked into this? We must now get into details. Now, the word person. So subsequent to the foreign contribution and hospitality is the word person. Who is a person under the act is also defined. So an individual is a person. So if an individual is receiving foreign contribution for a particular project, he or she also needs to get uh, approval from the MHA before receiving foreign contribution. HUF, an association, and that's where we are. So a trust, a society will is part of point number 3. And the fourth, of course, is a not-for-profit company under the Section 8 under 2013 and Section 25 under 1956. So these are the 4 categories of entities which have been specified under FCRA as being covered under the definition of a person receiving foreign contribution. Okay, so we are clearly included a society, a trust, and a Section 8 company, which are the normal modes of implementation, are clearly included as a person, including an individual. Please remember that. Now, there are a couple of additional things that we need to know about a person. 3 things more specifically have been specified. Now, a person should receive foreign contribution if that contribution is for a defined purpose. Okay, a definite purpose has to be seen. The money just cannot come for anything. There has to be a definite purpose for that money. And the nature of activity, or the purpose as it is called, has been categorized into 5. It's cultural, economic, educational, social, or religious. It can be and also. All 5 can be there. You may select any 3, you may select any 2. How will you select the 2 or the 5? Is based on your charter and your work. So you may want to add some things just to ensure that as you move along, you might want to add. The department does not restrict you to even opt for all 5. However, it is good first to at least select the ones which are closest to our charter and our activity. One has to be very careful here, because if we are not selecting the right purpose and the money is coming for another purpose, the MHA might question that you have not got registered for this purpose. And therefore, it's very important at the time when you are actually selecting the purpose in filing your registration form, because that registration or renewal form will, when it is processed and you get your certificate of registration, on the certificate of registration it will be clearly mentioned that the nature of activity that this certificate is permitted is one of the five or all five. So very, very important. I sometimes ask people who are FCRA registered, what is the defined purpose for your receiving foreign contribution? And they say, we don't know that. We don't know that. So I said, where should it be mentioned in terms of your purpose? What purpose you can, for what purpose you can receive foreign contribution as per your certificate of registration? And half of them just don't even know where it is mentioned. What is the purpose for which you have to, you are seeking registration for receiving foreign contribution? The purpose is to be mentioned in your registration and renewal form, and the same is mentioned on the first page of your certificate of registration. Okay. And it is very important to give attention to that, because this is the purpose for which you can receive foreign contribution and utilize foreign contribution. Also, it should be more or less in line with your income tax registration, your charter, your activities. Okay, so there has to be some alignment there. It cannot be different things, because if you are not a religious institution and you select religious, then the MHA might ask you, your charter does not talk of religious. Your 12A registration, it does not talk about anything like religion. How are you asking for funds under FCRA? Then you might be under scanner. The second thing is that you can receive FCRA funds only under two options. One is what is called FCRA registration, and the second is what is called prior permission. Now, the distinction between registration and prior permission is that if you are not eligible for registration, and there is a certain eligibility criteria for registration, or if you are eligible for registrations but do not want to get registered, then if you want to get foreign contribution, the other option is prior permission. Prior permission means before you receive a certain foreign contribution, you must have prior permission. Please remember, prior permission is for a specific donation by a foreign source. It is not a blanket permission like a registration. It is only meant for that particular donation for which it has been granted. So, generally, people opt for registration if they are eligible, and if they are not eligible and if they still need to get foreign contribution, then the prior permission route is available. So you will have to get either of the two before you can get foreign contribution. And the third thing is that you should not be a prohibited person. Okay, under FCR. Now, in the next slide, I will show you who are prohibited persons. Those people cannot accept foreign contribution. So, if we were to now look at a person, then there are, okay, before that, let me just say who are not covered under the definition of person. So, all the things that we have seen provides for a regulation for a person. The need for not getting regulated is are basically two cases. One is if there is a statutory body which has been created by the government. This was introduced in 2020, and the creation of that entity. So if it's a corporation or if it's a not for profit body that has been created by government as an executive order or under parliament, or legislature, and its audits is conducted by the office of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, then it is not considered. Even if it gets foreign contribution, then it does not need to be regulated. It may get foreign contribution without getting a registration. And the second thing is, if the government of India and a foreign government, they have a transaction, that's not considered as part of FCRA. So if you will see, there are three category of persons. The one is prohibited, which we will see in the next slide. Second is regulated. These are the ones that for that we are, and all the provisions that we are going to study is around regulation for regulated person. And the third one is non-regulated. As I told you, two kinds of transactions. One is a body created and audited by created by government and audited by CNAG, and the second one is any transactions between the government, our government, and any other foreign government. So our discussion will be all around a regulated person. Now, what is a prohibited person? All these are prohibited persons. Candidate for election, somebody who's working in for the newspaper. Again, if you see, all these prohibited persons can affect policy and decision making, and therefore, they are prohibited from getting any foreign contribution which may be detrimental to the national interest. Public servants, judge, government servants, these are all included. Anybody who's working in a corporation or a company owned by the government, members of parliament, office bearers, political party, organization of a political nature. Now, the rules define what is an organization of a political nature, and we must be very careful when we do our activity. We may not be a political party, but we can be considered as an organization which is into of a political nature, and the rules specify what is considered as as a matter of political nature. Okay, that is specified in the. So you can see what it means to be an organization of political nature. And when we do a lot of work around rights and entitlements under our company, our organizations, we have to be careful that we don't walk into the definition of what is an organization of political nature. Sometimes in enthusiasm we might get into that, and therefore we might become, our registration might be cancelled because we will be considered as a prohibited person because we are an organization of political nature. This is very, very important. Okay, then of course there are others, which is basically uh, around, audiovisual or visual news and people who are creating that news, because a lot of news affects, influences the public sentiment, and the public sentiment can be, uh, vitiated by any kind of foreign contribution that might come from a foreign source with a malified intention. So these are any others that might be defined by the central government. In 2020, the word public servant was also included in the category of prohibited category persons. So what the lesson for us is, the organization of a political nature and the definition of what is a public servant. And this public servant might be a person to whom you might extend foreign hospitality or foreign contribution. In both cases, you have to be very, very careful. Thus, prohibited person receiving foreign contribution is a no-no. Receiving foreign hospitality is possible only after approvals, but can they be on your board? The answer is yes, as long as you are not providing them with any kind of, you know, uh, foreign contribution, they can be. However, if with such people, if you have a service contract or a contract in terms of fee for service, then as per the definition of foreign contribution, I had said it gets away from the definition of foreign contribution. So one has to know this, but one has to be extra careful while dealing with these people, both in terms of any governance position as well as in terms of any transaction based on their experience qualification as fee for service. Okay. If it is not fee for service and outside the purview of foreign contribution, then giving foreign contribution will be a violation. Then comes the key definition of foreign source. Okay, this is very important because how do you decide whether you are under FCRA or not? Very critical to know whether the money that has come is from a foreign source, and the responsibility for knowing whether it is from a foreign source or a local source is on you, not on anybody else. Okay, so our understanding of foreign source needs to be clear. We need to get all possible documentation to see whether that source is a foreign source or an Indian source. Okay, what is a foreign source as defined under the FCRA? One, any government or any agency of the government, any international agency, and these are the agencies that give us money. Okay, now, there are a list of 117 entities which are excluded, international agencies which are excluded from the definition of international agencies, including the World Bank, the IMF, the UN agencies. So you can look at the list of 117 entities on fcraonline.nic.in. When you receive money from any international agency, is that money is that money foreign contribution or is that not foreign contribution because the agency has been excluded, has been exempted from FCRA? So sometimes you get money from UNICEF, and these people keep asking me, UNICEF is it's an international agency. Now, is this money that is coming from UNICEF a local money or foreign money? Please remember, most UN agencies are in the exempt category, and therefore, from USAID or UNICEF or UNFPA or UNDP, you get money that is Indian source. Okay, that is Indian source. The third thing is a foreign company. What is a foreign company? We'll see it in the next slide. A corporation. Okay, so you hear the word corporations in foreign countries instead of a foreign company, and that's why this word, a multinational corporation, is another word which is used. These are all set up in foreign countries, is the prime consideration. Now, an Indian company in which a foreigner or foreign company holds more than 51% shareholding. Please remember this point number 6 has been deleted in 2016. So there could be a situation where more than 51% of an Indian company might be held by foreigners. It's not a foreign company as long as, with another condition, as long as the foreign holding in that company is not breaching the FDI rules under FEMA. So under FEMA, the for various sectors there are FDI rules, which means foreign direct investment in those sectors cannot exceed more in terms of more than a certain percentage in terms of shareholding. If so, you'll have to be mindful. One, more than 51%, no problem. It is not a foreign source. It was a foreign source under 2016. However, before saying that it is not a foreign source, you will have to look at the FDI limit under FEMA for, for that sector in which that company is, to be able to see whether it is a foreign source or not. So that is the consideration that has to be seen. A trade union, okay, a foreign trust or a foundation, okay. So you might have a lot of foreign trusts or foundations in a foreign country who are supporting a society, a club, association, okay, a foreign citizen. So it could be a body of foreigners as an association or a club or a foundation or a trust or a section 501c3 entity under US laws as a public charity or a foreign citizen. So please remember, even a foreign individual who is a citizen of a foreign country is also a foreign source. So if he comes to your office and gives you 1,000 rupees just like that, or maybe a lakh of rupees or a check for a lakh of rupees, uh, you know, that is all foreign contribution because the source is foreigner. So I've said that again and again, that you have to understand the source and get, if you're not sure, please get as many documents to understand whether the source is foreign or not. Please remember, a non-resident Indian is an Indian and therefore is not a foreign source. Now, there is a definition of non-resident Indian, which you must know, which we had seen. And but an OCI, an overseas citizen of India, or a person of Indian origin holding a passport or an OCI card, they are foreign, they are a foreign source. So also remember this, please. Okay. So other things we have already seen. What's a foreign company? Continuing with the foreign source. In any company or a subsidiary of that company, but incorporated outside India. So these companies are not incorporated in India under the Companies Act. They are incorporated outside India, including the subsidiary of that foreign company. However, any Indian company which has invested in a foreign company under Section 379 of the Companies Act, just for your information, who holds more than 51% of that shareholding in that foreign company, but is an Indian company, is also a foreign source. Now, the definition of a multinational corporation essentially means any foreign entity which has two or more offices and they are all operating outside India. Now, these words, multinational corporations, corporations, are very peculiar to foreign countries. But for us, what is important is that that entity, incorporated entity, is incorporated outside India. And that detail we must have, including their registration number. So we will need the registration numbers as it is when we have to file our Form 10BD. Please remember, FC contribution also have to be reported in Form 10BD. Now, please remember that when you're looking at foreign source, some of the donors, the list is not provided in public domain, but the MHA has a list of what is called as PRC. It is called the prior reference category. These are category of donors, okay, or people of foreign source which are put on a watch list because of their activities. So if that donor who's giving money to you is under PRC, the SBI will not release the money to you, but will return the money to that donor saying that we cannot allow this money to come in India. That's what is called as the prior reference category as far as a donor is concerned. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking of the person who wants to give you foreign contribution. Now we come to a definition of what is called administrative expenses. Now, administrative expenses, if you are able to understand these definitions, I think your job is done majorly, because the rest of the provisions all revolve around our understanding of these words. Administrative expenditure is why, because under the Act and rules, the government has said when you get foreign contribution, your administrative expenditure cannot be more than an X percentage. That is what is mentioned in the Act, and that has been specified in the rules in terms of, so the Act says you cannot spend more than 20% of the foreign contribution received in a particular year on administrative expenditure. Please remember, the administrative expenditure is on receipt, on FC receipts, and not on utilization or expenditure. Okay, that's one has to. And what constitutes administrative expenditure is defined in rule number 5 of the FCR rules. So what does it include? It includes salaries, wages, travel to anybody who is on your governing. So your governing body members, if you are giving them salaries, can you give salaries? The answer is yes, because that is different from the governance position that he holds. But if you are giving salary, wages, travel, or any remuneration, okay, uh, to the governing body person, that is administrative expenditure. Expenses towards hiring of personnel for management of activities of the person. So this point number two is very important. People who are in supervisory position in organizations are covered under point number two because they are in management of the activities of the person. And salaries, wages, or any remuneration paid, including travel, is uh, is administrative expenditure. So you have to know and define who are the people who are managing your organization. Now, management of the activities can be interpreted in various ways, but you will have to be consistent in terms of defining what is management of activities because that's not been defined. So people who are supervisors and above and holding key managerial positions definitely would be considered as part of administrative expenditure. Expenses on electricity, water, so all the utility things, rent, all that is considered as expenditure. Uh, Fundraising expenditure, stationery and printing charges, transportation and travel charges by members of the executive committee. They are all considered administrative. Cost of accounting, administering funds. So accounts people, their cost is program, their cost is administrative. Expenses towards running of vehicles. Now, if you are able to have projects and the particular accounts person or the vehicle, you can show an attribution to that particular project implementation, then and not show them in managerial position is something that you can still work out. But however, it is better to go by the strict definition of administrative expenditure as long as you are able to fulfill the 20% rule. Cost of writing and filing reports, legal professional charges, all charges for audit, legal advice, rent of premises, repairs, and expenses on other utilities other than water and electricity. Two things have been provision, two things have been excluded. One, if you are an educational institution, then the salaries to the teachers that you pay will not be considered as administrative expenditure. If you are a research organization, then the salaries that you pay to people who conduct research will not be considered as administrative. These are two provision to this rule where it has been specified that it will not be considered as administrative expenditure, provided that the expenditure incurred is, for people engaged in research, okay, or training, and people engaged in, you know, uh, uh, medical and educational institutions, okay, because that is considered to be giving the benefit directly to the community. What administrative expenditure, the interpretation generally is this direct, is the expenditure that is being incurred directly benefiting the community or the beneficiary. That probably is the thumb rule that has to be, or the asset test that has to be used for purposes of seeing whether something should be administrative or program if there is a confusion. However, the rule 5 does elaborate what is administrative expenditure. So we come to the end of what are the key concepts here as far as FCRA is concerned. And I come to this particular slide, which basically sums up the architecture for FCRA for regulated entities. We had seen that there can be three types of entities: prohibited, regulated, and non-regulated. Okay, so now we are talking of the regulated entities, and I have categorized the architecture into four parts. One, registration; second, regulation; third, restriction; and fourth is consequences for non-regulation or restriction. Now, if this particular slide actually summarizes the entire act, everything is related to that. First is registration. So as I had said that you cannot have FCRA operations without either a registration or prior permission. Okay. Now either of the two is required for getting foreign contribution. The second one is regulation. Now, what are the regulations that are there? You have banking related regulations. So you can have bank accounts related regulation, which says that you can have 3 tiers of bank accounts duly approved by the MHA to operate foreign contribution. So one is called the FCRA account, which is with the State Bank of India, New Delhi main branch. You can have other FCRA account. Now that other FCRA account was to facilitate continuation of operation of the erstwhile designated FCRA account before SBI was made the FCRA account. So you could continue with that designated FCRA account, which was in any bank, not in SBI necessarily, which was in any PFMS compliant bank as laid down in the website and attached. So you could have the second category of account as FCRA account, and the third is what is called as FC utilization account. Now, in our understanding, these accounts can all be used interchangeably, although banks have different interpretation. And it is good to refer to the charter for banks to be able to understand more clearly what can be deposited where or operated where. However, I have a slide on credit of FC in which kind of bank account and what kind of payments we will see that. Separate books of account for receipt and utilization. We know that the FCRA books have to be separate. It is a subset of the main books, but they have to be set up separately. The accounting for that, the audit for that, and the financials audited for that have to be separate. Please remember the audited financials for the FCRA portion of your organization has to be attached to the annual return in FC4, and therefore it has to be made separately, both in terms of the income expenditure, the R&P, the receipt and payment, and the balance sheet. The annual return in form number FC4 is something that you have to file every year. Okay. And this is something which is also part of the regulation. Okay. So you have to file it every year by the 31st of December for that respective year. So if it is 24-25, then by 31st December 2025, you have to file this annual return. Now, generally, if there is no other change, then in FCRA, while we had seen forms in income tax, so many of them, but if there are no changes for you in FCRA related compliances, then the annual return in FC4 is the only one return that has to be complied with on an annual basis. Declarations have to be made in the annual return that we will see. The intimation of various kinds of changes. Now, we will see the forms for intimation of various kinds of changes and what those changes are. So those are also regulated by the FCRA. Now, suppose you will have a change in your board position. Okay, then in that case, you will have to in your office bearers basically. There is a confusion again in terms of whether it will be applicable for any member or office bearers. If you have a very limited list, then you can look at the members. But if you have a very long list of members, then probably the office bearers would be more manageable and feasible. So the various kind of changes that you will make, they are all to be reported. Now, I have mentioned the word intimation. Please remember the word intimation is not enough. The word intimation has to be followed by approval. So it's only when the approval is given by the ministry is that change valid as far as FCRA is concerned. Restriction. Restriction is a ceiling on administrative cost or expenditure, which we have seen as 20%. Prohibition on speculative activity with the foreign contribution. So the where money can be invested which is foreign contribution, there is a difference in terms of understanding Section 11(5) modes of investment, or where you can put money, where versus where you can put foreign contribution money. And you need to understand that it should not be that you put your money in mutual funds as far as foreign contribution is concerned, because that is considered speculative, which may not be considered as speculative for domestic funds. That is what I'm trying to say. Prohibition on FC transfer to another person. This you all know. There is no subgranting or inter-charity donation permitted now after 2020. Use of foreign contribution only for the defined purpose as per the five limbs. The five limbs, as I call them, the CEERS, the cultural, educational, economic, religious, and social. Please refer to your nature of activity in your certificate of registration and your foreign contribution for various projects should be in line with the defined purpose for which your registration has been given. The next one is consequences. So if we do not get regulated, we do not get restricted with based on whatever are the restriction, then the consequences can be suspension of our certificate, can be cancellation of our certificate, and can also be penalty and prosecution. So criminal prosecution can be initiated by the MHA. The MHA might impose penalty for various violations, as I had said. So there are penalties for, there's a whole list of penalty for various kinds of offenses. So if you have exceeded 20%, you have not filed your annual return, you have done this, you have done that, all those are violations for which there is a monetary penalty, and that penalty has to be paid. However, it can be condoned. But one condonation, if you get for the next 3 years, you cannot get condonation of penalty for the next 3 years. So this is the architecture of Fcra as far as we are concerned. If you are able to understand this architecture, if you are able to understand the definitions, then your understanding of the Fcra Act or this piece of legislation will be clear. So I am now getting into some of the amendments in Fcra as well as the provisions of the FCR rules which are operational. Now, we have seen quite a few of these already. No subgranting, cap on administrative expenditure. Please remember, administrative expenditure is based on foreign contribution receipts in that year. So if you have 100 crores of foreign contribution received in 24-25, which has just closed, then your administrative expenditure is 20% of 100 crores. It is not 20% of your total expenditure. That is what you have to understand. So a lot of organizations have been using utilization, that is the payments under the receipt and payment, or even expenditure. Please remember, reporting on Fcra is based on the receipt and payment statement, because all reporting under Fcra is on cash basis, So for us, as far as audited financials, FC financials are concerned, we have to go by the receipt and payments. The receipt means what has been recorded on the left hand side of our RNP statement as foreign contribution receipts is what I'm referring to. And what is your administrative expenditure is basically on the right hand side, how you have classified your expenditure, your actual payments that you have made. So it's always very good to have some kind of tab in your software to be able to classify every expenditure that comes for recording as program and administrative based on rule 5, and other than that everything will be programmed. So every month or on a regular basis you can also see whether you are not crossing 20%. This also should be the basis on which you should budget, because your monies will come and your reporting will be based on the budget. So when you are drawing up budgets, you have to be very careful in terms of seeing what cost elements are considered as administrative in that budget, and that you do not normally exceed 20%. You may in some projects exceed 20%, you might be in some projects less than 20%, also possible. But when I say 20%, it could be 22%, 23%, but not 50% or 60%, because the administrative expenditure is at the organizational level as far as reporting is concerned. So when you are making the administrative expenditure calculation, it is always good to make that as part of your notes to accounts in the audited financials. So that whenever it is referred to during audit by the MHA, you might not be there, okay? Some other person might be there and who would not know how the calculation was done. So it is always good to include this calculation of administrative expenditure in the notes to accounts. Please remember, you have a schedule in your audited financials, and I see that is not being practiced by chartered accountants also, or your statutory auditors, in terms of what is your significant accounting policies and what is your notes to accounts explanation to the various accounts that you have. It's better to give that detail there in the notes to accounts, so that when there is an audit or when the ministry wants to see whether you have exceeded 20%, or when you have to declare that you have not exceeded 20%, the ministry can automatically check from the audited financials whether you have complied or not. The third is the definition of public servant. We have already seen that suspension of registration earlier was for 180 days. It's been extended to 360 days. What does suspension mean? Suspension means that there is a violation that we have done, and based on the violation, there is a reason for inquiry to be done by the government or the MHA. During that period, the COR or the certificate of registration will stand suspended. Can you do activities? Yes, you can do activities. You will have to apply, and the maximum amount of foreign contribution that can be released for utilization during suspension period is 25%. So you will have to get that permission for being able to continue during suspension. Now, when suspension, during the period of suspension, which earlier was 6 months, is now 1 year. It's a long period. So after some time, you will not be able to continue because you have exhausted the 25% of the foreign contribution available in your bank account. But the remaining 75% will be available only if your suspension proceedings does not means that your license has been not jeopardized further. It has been, that suspension proceeding has been revoked and your certificate has been reinstated. Then you can start. But if the suspension has leads to a decision by the MHA that you cannot proceed with, then it will result in cancellation. Now, these are penal provisions. Suspension and cancellation are previous penal provisions. But please remember, besides suspension and cancellation, there is another word called cessation of your certificate of registration. That's not a penal provision. This cessation of your, you know, certificate of registration is basically that you did not renew your certificate. It's not a penalty, but that is when your certificate of registration will cease. So you need to understand suspension, cancellation, and cessation are used as different words under the Act and meaning different things. Uh, in case of prior permission, earlier if there was an inquiry for any violation, under prior permission, there was the utilization was allowed. In 2020, this utilization has been banned or stopped. So if there is an inquiry that has been instituted and you have a prior permission, you cannot continue utilizing the money unless the inquiry has been completed and you are clear of that inquiry. Now, The FCRA bank account, we have already seen in regulation that there are three tiers of bank account. Okay. Aadhaar passport has been made mandatory for purposes who are office bearers. Okay. So if it's a foreigner, the passport. If they are Indians, the Aadhaar has to be a mandatory provision for getting any registration, renewal, prior permission, or whatever. This, without that, just as I mentioned, without NGO Darpan UIN, you cannot proceed. Similarly, for without these, you cannot. Renewal after due inquiry. Now, when you have a renewal of your certificate of registration once every 5 years, in 2020, they said we will not issue renewals as such, but it will be after a process of due inquiry. And that due inquiry means that the various departments of the MHA will first see whether all the information is correct or not. And so those people who have certificate of registration must be knowing that there is how the inquiry happens. So when in 2011 the the law came and the registrations were given, in 2016, 5 years later, the registrations were renewed. That time also there was no inquiry. You filed the form, but in 2000, from 2021 onwards, after the amendment was made in 2020, all renewals are after a process of inquiry. So it's very important. Similar to what now is happening in income tax. You are given a certificate under 12A for 5 years to be renewed after 5 years after with due inquiry. That's exactly the kind of parallel that is now happening in income tax. Surrender of registration. So that means that if you are not happy with continuing with FCRA, you have a provision which was not there earlier that you can apply for surrendering your registration. However, you have to be careful when you are surrendering, because if you surrender, that means that all the foreign contribution in your bank account as well as the assets created through foreign contribution will pass on to the prescribed authority, here in this case the government. So if you have created assets through foreign contribution, I think the surrender rule or the cancellation route or the cessation route just does not exist. If you have not created assets, if you have used foreign contribution for normal programs in terms of, you know, operations and not created capital assets, then if you think surrender is possible, surrender can be done in that situation, provided you have utilized your foreign contribution and no assets have been created. Then that's the route. Otherwise, this route is not available. Now, here I've tried to mention that without three things, without the unique ID of Darpan, without the FCRA account being opened, and without Aadhaar and passport, you cannot proceed with registration, prior permission, or renewal. Your this is a table which when these were made mandatory, they said now we will not proceed. But here I want to tell you, you cannot start the application process without these three mandatory provisions. Now coming to what can be credited in the FCRA account and in other accounts, this is from the charter of banks that has been put by the MHA. Okay. So the first three are foreign contributions. Whether you get the foreign contribution in India or from a foreign source or from a foreign country from that foreign source. All these three conditions, the money has to be deposited in the New Delhi main branch. If the source is located in India, point number two, then also, and the source gives you Indian currency, then also it has to be deposited in SBI. The fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh are situations where you can deposit the money in any account, including the FCRA account. Okay. Now here there is a difference in terms of the understanding and interpretation by banks, which you will have to negotiate. Let me tell you that. So, but depending upon what accounts you have, sometimes people who have small operations might want to just do the operation through the main branch only. They get the FC and they operate from the main branch also, or they may open another FCRA account Okay, it's called the other FCRA account, or they may open a FC utilization account, transfer the monies received in New Delhi main branch and utilize it from the FC utilization account or the other FCRA account. So when it comes to interest that accrues on the FC received in any bank account, so if you had made a you had designated bank account earlier and you made an FD, so that account number is mentioned here. If you have that account number as the other FCRA account, the money can be deposited in the other FCRA account. Sometimes these banks without understanding will say, no, no, we will give the draft. You have to deposit it only in your FCRA account. That's not correct actually. Any incomes generated from any assets can be deposited in any FCRA account. Any proceeds from sale of FC received in kind or in form of securities can be in any FCRA account. Any redeposit of unutilized money, so you gave some advance and that money is redeposited, it can be deposited in any account. It will be good to deposit it in the account from which it was initially issued. Okay, it is important to know these provisions because when you start banking, banks will have different understanding, and it is important to read the charter for banks and refer to that charter, which is a public document, so that banks can help you with that. Now I refer to some of the provisions in the rules which are important. So when we were talking for eligibility for registration, and I said if you are eligible for registration, please go for registration. If you are not eligible for registration, then you if and somebody wants to give you foreign contribution, you will have to do it through prior permission route. Now, what are the eligibility criteria? There are two broadly. One is you must have a 3-year track record. Now, the 3-year track record means you must have 3 audited financial statements. Second, 15 lakhs of the expenditure in those 3 years should be on your core activity. Core activity means program activity, not expenditure. However, if you are falling short of 15 lakhs and if there are fixed assets that have been purchased in your organization in the balance sheet, then that can be considered also as core activity for 15 lakhs, provided the chief functionary will give a declaration that these assets will not be disposed of till the time we have a registration. Now, prior permission, so if that is the case, then good, you can go for registration. Prior permission has to be for us against a specific commitment letter from the foreign source, specific amount and specific activities. So these three things should be clearly mentioned in the commitment letter. What is the amount, who is the donor, and what is the specific activity. Now, there is a time period that has been specified in the month of April for prior permission also that we will see. No common membership should be there between the donor and you as the recipient for for prior permission, because this particular route was misused earlier and therefore it is becoming very difficult to get prior permission. So they have introduced the question of relatedness. So I'm not getting into details, but there should not be any relatedness between the person, foreign source that is making the foreign contribution and you receiving it. If there is foreign contribution more than 1 CR, then uh, the the prior permission letter will say that it will be released by the foreign source in installment. And after it has been verified, so basically it will say that you spend the money. So if you got 1.5 CR as the commitment letter, then they say uh, 75 lakhs is the first installment. You have to use 75%, come to us, we will verify that it is 75% has been spent and then give you permission for the remaining 75%. So to that extent, the prior permission route is becoming very, very difficult. The next is renewal. Renewal is a renewal application 6 months before the expiry of your certificate of registration as provided in rules. and you have to deposit a fee. You have to file a certain form, which we will see, form number FC3C. However, if your validity expires, which means what is called as cessation of your certificate, then you can file for fresh registration. You can also apply to the department for condonation by giving a additional fee of 5,000 rupees. Not necessary that that condonation will be given. You may be required to go in for fresh registration. So, for instance, if you have a certificate of registration up to 31st May and you did not apply for renewal, then the only option available to you in cessation, which is not a penalty, is to go for a fresh new registration for a period of 5 years. Cessation, no receipt or utilization will be possible of contribution that is available, and the assets created through FC will vest with the prescribed authority. Now, in terms of cancellation, which is a penal provision, the unutilized FC vests with the with the prescribed authority as on the date of cancellation. During the period of suspension, 25% can be utilized subject to approval. And once your certificate is cancelled, fresh certificate or fresh registration application can be made only after a cooling period of 3 years. So if you have cessation, then you can apply immediately for fresh certificate. If you have cancellation, then 3 years you'll have to wait. Now I have mentioned the fees for registration, renewal, and prior permission. Please remember that when you are mentioning the details of people on your board, then you have to also file a pro forma double A, which is an affidavit, but to be provided by these office bearers. And it's not a very simple pro forma, because it says that if there is anything wrong happening in FCRA, I will report it to the FCRA department. I will take responsibility for ensuring compliance. So many times these kind of affidavit is not something very comfortable for people, and they don't want to be in board positions. So when you apply for FCRA, when you apply for a new person being introduced, this form number pro forma double A has to be submitted. Okay, along with your form, renewal form, your registration form, or if during the period of registration there is a change, then you will have to file form number FC6E for intimation and approval of changes. That time also this proforma or affidavit, proforma double A as an affidavit on non-judicial stamp paper, duly notarized, all that will have to be provided by that board person. Okay, so please remember this. Then I said that the government has said that unless an organization is into active politics or party politics, it will not be considered as an organization of political nature. So this is a kind of a certain benefit that has been given to organizations, especially in 2020, when they say we will need to see whether that organization was doing active politics or was working with political parties for party politics. Now, this is a good relaxation, because then many of the things that were considered as political nature has got settled. However, we have to be very careful in terms of not being within the definition of organization of political nature. Otherwise, our certificate is liable to be cancelled, because then we will move into the definition of a prohibited person. Now, if there is an order that has been issued by the ministry, any order or any decision that has been conveyed, you can ask for revision of that order. You can also ask for compounding of penalties. So these are two different things. There can be a penalty that has been imposed. You can ask for compounding by filing, online a form for revision or condonation or compounding of offenses. But once you have done this, the next compounding can be only after 3 years. So these are some of the provisions in the law, in the rules that I just wanted to say are operational provisions, especially introduced in 2020. This is a change that was made recently. So there are two, three things here that I want to tell you. Now, if an individual receives a foreign contribution as from a relative, then earlier the provision there was that if you receive foreign contribution from a relative of up more than 1 lakh, then you have to report in form number FC1. Now this has been increased to 10 lakhs. So an individual may get foreign contribution from a relative only if it exceeds more than 10 lakh rupees is when the form 1 has to be filed, and that has to be filed not within 30 days but within 3 months now. So that is also an extended period. Now, in most cases where there is an intimation of change in form FC6 A to E, okay, we will see that the period has been extended from 50 for submission of these forms has been extended from increased from say 15 days to 45 days. Okay, we will see what these forms 6A to E are. What does it entail? But presently for us, it is important to know that it can be done within a period of 45 days instead of 15 days now. Now, the application for revision of order can be made within a period of 1 year from the date of the order. Earlier, it was plain paper. Now that application you can find in services under Fcra as an online submission. Okay. So any order that has been passed, you can appeal against that within 1 year, and that will be online now. Another thing that you need to know is that earlier, the foreign contribution receipts were required to be reported every quarter, either on your website or to the MHA in a particular format. From 2022 July 1st, this particular requirement has been closed. So now you don't have to put the FC receipts every quarter in your website, or you need not report it to the MHA. This is because all FC receipts are centrally now known to MHA from SBI. So there is MHA has now done away with the provision related to quarterly FC receipts being uploaded on your website or on the ministry's website. Many of the organizations are still making this FC receipts in a quarter on their website even up till now. So please remember that condition that has been omitted. Now I come to the part related to the various forms. So these are compliances related. Now we have to understand, we have seen the law, we have seen the provisions. We now have to see what is the compliance. I said to you that if there are no reasons, then only at least one change is something that has to be one reporting is something that needs to be done, and that's your annual return in FC4. And we will see that. However, if there are other situations, then we have to file our forms. Now, every form has a prefix FC. It's from 1 to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There is no 5 actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. Now, what we'll see each of them and what does it mean. You can have a look at the sample form on the Fcra online.nic.in. Go to the tab services under Fcra and you will see all these forms floating mentioned there, form numbers mentioned there. Click on any one of them and you can there is a tutorial on how to fill the form. There is a sample blank form and there are instructions on what documents to add to this form. So you don't have to run around. You have to be more meticulous in terms of how you will report after knowing all these information, which are all available on the site itself. So the FC1 form is essentially for two things for us. For one thing for us, actually, as NGOs. Part number B, intimation of foreign contribution received as articles or securities from a foreign source. Only then FC1 form has to be filed. So please remember the kinds of support that we might get has to be reported not in FC4 but in FC1. B, Part B. Part C is for people who are contesting elections, so it's not concerning us. Part A is for individuals who are receiving currency by way of gift from a relative. We just saw that in the previous slide. If an individual is receiving a gift from a relative of up to 10 lakhs, no reporting. More than 10 lakhs, reporting. But do you need a foreign contribution? Registration? No, the FC1 does not have a registration number. But you will have to say that I have received the gift from this as currency as gift from a relative, as gift from a relative. But if it is for a particular CEERS program as an individual, then this is not part A. You have to go to registration or prior permission. Please understand that distinction clearly. So if you get gift by way of currency from a relative up to 10 lakhs, no reporting. Earlier 1 lakh. Reporting within 3 months. If you're getting more than 10 lakhs, you have to report within 3 months. Okay. Now the part B is basically something where we get kind supplies or we get, securities. 1 minute. Just let me see. So beyond 10 lakhs, you go 3 months from their period, you will have to submit FC1 Part A as an individual. That's about it. Part B is to be filled when you get securities or when you get kind supply. FC2 is for availing hospitality. This foreign hospitality FC2 form has to be filled by the person who is receiving hospitality. And the approval of the FC2 has to be provided to you before you grant foreign hospitality or before the foreign source grants hospitality. If the money is coming from a foreign source to you and then you are supporting the foreign hospitality, please get the approval before you extend foreign hospitality. FC3 has suffix A, B, and C. A is for registration, B is for prior permission, and C is for renewal. On the right hand side, I have mentioned certain things. You can go through it. So when we were talking of registration and we are 3 years old, 3 years, more than 3 years old, more specifically, three balance sheet old, then we can file for 3A. 3B is if we are not eligible. And 3C is if we hold a certificate of registration and now 5 years are expiring, we have to file for renewal. You can see all these forms on the services under Fcra tab. Very good to see them. The next one is the form number 4. I will see that with you. 5 is not no longer there. The 5 was actually to other sub grants to other organizations. Earlier, sub-grants could be given to organizations which were not even registered under Fcra. Then subsequently, the Fcra could be given to organizations which were registered under Fcra as sub-grant. Now that is completely banned. Both are banned. Now FC6 is intimation. Please remember the word intimation is actually approval. A to E. We will see this. A is when there is a change in name or address. Okay. B is when there is a change in the nature of business, aims, and objects. So once the necessary permissions have been given for these, then with those permissions, you will have to file the form 6A or 6B within a period of 45 days. Earlier, it was 15 days. 6C is for opening of the Fcra account with New Delhi main branch and with approval of the designated FCRA account, earlier designated FCRA account into other FCRA account, or if you want to open other FCRA account, then also Form 6C. So the Form 6C is for the primary FCRA account with New Delhi main branch and with other FCRA account in the three-tier banking system. The 6D is for FC utilization bank account. So if you want to have program related, grant related, donor specified FC utilization account, then you'll have to do 6D. Please remember 6D, if you open the account, the 6D is valid. But if you close the account, the 6D does not, there is no 6D for closure. So you can only write to the ministry and say, we have closed this account. Now, at times they may update it in their system. At times they may not update it in their system. Okay. So it might continue in your FC4 because the FC4 has the bank details auto-populated. So you'll have to see that. Okay. I want to also mention here that when you are opening a FC utilization account with a bank, so you have opened it and now you told the bank that, well, this is an FC utilization account. At that time, they did not say anything and the FC utilization account has been opened as a normal account, but since the approval of FC6D will come later, they they may lose track. So once you have given them the approval under FC6D, you please ensure that your banker has notified that account as an FC utilization account. I've had cases where subsequently the bank says we did not even notify this as an FC utilization account. It's just like any other normal account. So we have to be very careful. We don't have to think that this is taken for granted. When you go back to the bank might have a different view. So it is very important that you very clearly have that understanding. And whenever you have the balance confirmation annually, please see that they specify that this is a FC utilization account. If it's an FC other account, there's no confusion as far as FCRA account is concerned. Then the 6E is for change in office bearers. Okay. Change in key members in respect of the person. Okay. Uh, Now we understand that the change in key persons is essentially related to change in the governing board. Okay. In certain cases, the governing board has 20, 30, 40 people in some organization. So you might have to actually rationalize and see who will be the key persons. But when the number of key governing body members, which for a society is minimum 7, for a trust is not even 7, it's just 2. So, or maybe for a Section 8 company, which is a private company, the number of members, directors is just 2. So that's manageable. So if that is how you will consider them as office bearers or key functionary, not defined anywhere. The word person is what is mentioned everywhere, and we know what is a person. So you will have to intimate for any addition, deletion of any of these people to inform number 6E. Inform number 6E. All right. This is something that you please remember. And this intimation will be considered as valid only once it is approved by the ministry. The form number FC7 is for surrender. So you can, if you want to surrender, please go to the form. Please see what documents have to be attached. You'll have to explain why you want to uh, uh, this surrender. You will have to do your financials up to the date of surrender and all that. But you have now a facility and the surrender will be valid after on the date when your registration has been struck from the register of the MHA. So please remember that FC7 mere filing does not mean that you have surrendered. It's only once an approval of surrender is given to us. Now I come to FC4. I mean, these are some changes that are there. Now, please remember the FC4 annual return is a mandatory form, whether you receive foreign contribution or you don't receive foreign contribution. If you do not receive foreign contribution, still filing of FC4 is mandatory. The only exemption is that you need not attach the CA certificate. You will still have to draw the financials and attach the financial, but the CA certificate is, not necessary. In case you do not receive foreign contribution in that particular year, but filing of FC4 is mandatory and non-filing has offense, minimum 1 lakh or 5% of your receipts. And people have paid because you will not be allowed to file your FC4 without submitting the penalty. You can ask for condonation of penalty that I said. You can ask for condonation. You can ask for revision of order. All those provisions are there. Now, what I want to refer to you in this FC4 is the clause number 8. So the FC4 is something like this, that it says how much foreign contribution was your opening balance, how much was the interest that you get or any other income, how much was the foreign contribution that you received, and for various projects that you received or you had opening balances, you have to, report by project. Or if there are unembarked funds, which means there are unrestricted funds, what was those opening balances and what did you do that? Then after the utilization, you will have to say how much of this utilization is on cash basis, was on program and admin, and that should get reflected either in your RNP statement or in your notes to accounts. Then what is your unutilized foreign contribution? And the unutilized foreign contribution has to be in your bank or FDs or investment or your cash in hand, whatever it is, you have to report. You'll have to attach the bank statement of the FCRA account and of the other FCRA account. Generally, FC utilization account, sometimes no also, and the FC balance sheet and the auditor's certificate. So unutilized portion that is there, you have to also give details of acquisition of movable, immovable property and what are the details of those property. You can now also carry forward unutilized amount of administrative expenditure in a particular year to the next year. All those details will have to be provided. Then comes point number 8, which I am referring to. That's the clause 8. This is what is called self-declaration. And if you are able to understand the self-declaration, then you are able to understand all the compliances that are required. That is why I'm referring to this particular clause number 8. What are those clauses? What are the sub-clauses in this clause number 8, which you have to confirm? If you confirm otherwise, then you have a violation and there are penalties. Any foreign contribution was received in was transferred to any FCRA registered association. This is the section 7 of FCRA, which is subgranting. So you'll have to say a no. If you say yes, then you are in trouble. Any foreign contribution was transferred to non-FCRA registered association. It was possible earlier. Subsequently, it was not possible. So they want a confirmation. Any functionary of the organization has been prosecuted or convicted. So you must have these details. Any asset created, okay, has been registered, any asset that has been created from foreign contribution, is it in the name of the association or not? That has to be confirmed. Any domestic contribution has been deposited in FCRA account. This is non-mixing of funds, which is also an offense. Non-mixing of local and foreign funds is an offense. And I saw WhatsApp messages where they said, can we use the admin expenditure, admin cost, not admin expenditure, the indirect cost, can it be transferred to the domestic fund? Cannot be, because you will have to continuously report that in your FC4. Otherwise, your opening balance and your closing balance of your FC will not match in the FC4. The association has received any foreign contribution other than the designated FCRA account. Foreign contribution means primary foreign contribution has to come only in your FCRA account. Please ensure that to your donor you have given your SBI account and the donor does not have your earlier designated account. If it has, you have communicated clearly. Suppose sometimes what happens, 3-4 years that donor has not given money and we have not even updated the SBI account to them, and suddenly we find the money has come directly into the other FCRA account. That's a violation. The association has utilized foreign contribution other than the defined purpose. Please remember the 5 purposes. Then the money has been used for speculative activities. I have specified the section number 8. Oh, rule number 8, which defines what is speculative activity. Any money which is deposited, which is FC money, where there is an element of risk, means your money is not safe. Number two, where there is variability of return, that is, you may give higher return, you may get lower return. So there is any promise of higher return or where there is a risk is considered speculative. Now, in normal parlance for domestic funds, you can deposit the money in mutual funds, in even equity mutual funds. That is not permitted because that is a speculative activity as per Rule 4. A debt-based instrument, a debt-based investment will not be speculative. So if you invest in some debentures, in some deposits, or in some, fixed interest securities of the government, then that is backed by collateral. That debt instrument is not speculative. You will have to maintain a register of your investments, and that register may be asked by the auditors during audit. So please remember there is a distinction in terms of what is permitted for investment in FC versus local money. The association or its functionaries have violated any of the provisions of section 12.4, which is the condition for grant of registration. The association has spent admin expenditure more than 20%. Okay. Any fixed asset acquired out of foreign contribution has been sold. So you'll have to report because that will come in your FC balance sheet in the fixed asset schedule and in your FC4 in your movable immovable asset table now in your FC4, both in your FC4 as well as in your Fcra balance sheet. If you have sold any asset, has it been deposited in other than the Fcra account? Again, violation. Any FD proceeds from FC have been deposited in any other account other than the Fcra account. Now, you see, the problem is that there is so much looseness in terms of language that is being used in forms, in public notices, that it becomes sometimes difficult to interpret. Any organization belonging to the association is being managed or supported by the association. Very difficult to understand what this means, but it has been mentioned. Any foreign contribution used outside India, that's also an offense. Now, if you are able to remember these 15 declarations that you have to make in FC4, you will be able to remember at least the provisions related to regulation and restriction also. That is the reason why I am actually bringing this FC4 clause number 8 to you. If you know all the provisions and you are answering those provisions in clause 8 intelligently, then you also intelligently understand the provisions of the law, which we have seen, and now I'm kind of revising. These are some do's and don'ts that I have. Audited accounts of, so one, you have to have separate books of accounts, you have to have audit of accounts, you have to have your audited FCRA duly signed off by your statutory auditor or any another auditor. It doesn't really necessarily have to be the same auditor. But please remember that that statutory audit report has to be a separate report. It is a subset of your consolidated financial statement, but it has to be separate. There's so many calls coming actually. Okay. Now, the gray one is something that you please remember, and I therefore want you to refer to the charter for registration of entities. There you have what is called as the Financial Action Task Force Guidelines, FATF guidelines on best practices. Now, please remember that you will have to give an undertaking at the time of registration that you are following or you will follow the various points in the, in those guidelines that have been issued by FATF. This is something to do with, money laundering, bribery, and things like that. So it's something to do with that this FCRA thing, we will be very mindful of all this. And there are a host of things that the board needs to do. Please remember that. Okay. So please remember that the FC money has to be on end utilization basis, which means that the final point at which the money is to be spent is the point at which the money has to go, not through intermediaries. So it is good that you do not give project advances and give money which is FC directly to the on end utilization basis. This is something that we must practice. Okay. Understand the various definitions. Please remember that you please read the charter, which is something that I have mentioned. It's on fcraonline.nic. Okay. Nil FC return, even if no receipts have happened. Please visit the website uh, and get more and more information. Now, the FCRA department has created a separate portal. It's called www.helpdesk.fcraonline.gov.in. So if you have any grievance, you can raise a ticket on this portal. So you don't need to now write on fcraonline.gov.in, which was the case earlier. Now the help desk is a dedicated portal for FCRA related complaints, and they will be answered by the department. Now I come to updates that are there. Please remember that existing registrations where renewals have been filed on time have been exempt, have been extended. Blanket permission has been given up to 30th June unless the renewal application has been disposed of before that date, in terms of granting the renewal or not granting the renewal. If that decision has not been conveyed, then up to 30th June 2025, that certificate of registration is valid. Now you have to give the details of movable and immovable property for each year in FC4. Yeah, I think in clause number 4, there is uh, I think there is, it's B and BB, A and BB, which are the sub clauses where you have to provide details of movable and immovable assets that have been acquired during the year. Now, this is in addition to what you actually report in your fixed asset schedule in the balance sheet. So they want this to be also part of the FC4. You have to give a one-time FEMA declaration. Now, this is not part of FCRA, but under the FEMA Act, uh, the banks who are receiving foreign currencies have to comply with this FEMA declaration under the FEMA Act of 1999. So this declaration has to be provided once only to SBI. Okay. And they will allow operation of that account only once you give the FEMA declaration. So I mentioned what is the FEMA declaration, how to do it. It's a simple thing, but this is basically a declaration that has to be on non-judicial stamp paper at registration rates applicable in your state between you and the SBI New Delhi main branch. Okay. So this is a one-time deal. Now, please remember that where the from March 23, where the foreign contribution is transferred through intermediary banks and not directly by the originating bank of the donor, the details of name, address, the amount, and the purpose has to be intimated by the intermediary bank to SBI. So there are two ways. One is correspondent banks or intermediary banks, which serve as an intermediary between the originating bank and SBI. In such situations, the details have to be provided of who is the donor, what is the purpose for that intermediary bank before the money is accepted by SBI. However, if the originating bank of the donor directly transfers the money to SBI, then that situation will not arise. Otherwise, this SBI is returning that credit and not allowing that credit if that detail is not there. So, if there is a swift transfer directly by the foreign bank, no problem. Okay, so please remember that you have to be careful on that. Every day at the end of the day, the SBI New Delhi main branch has to provide details of how much foreign contribution was received in the country as a whole in to the MHA. So the SBI New Delhi main branch has about 14 to 15,000 bank accounts, all meant the FCRA branch of SBI New Delhi main branch only caters to FCRA accounts, which are about 15,000. So these are a huge number of bank accounts that that branch is handling. And you have to ensure that you work also with your home branch and with FCRA New Delhi main branch. Now I come to some of the updates that have happened in the last 4 months. And one important thing that I will want to share with you is a communication that has been issued by the ministry, which says when can your application for renewal be rejected and when can your application be for registration be cancelled. Very important to know those situations, and I'll come to those in the next couple of slides. But before that, the first one is that the ministry has said that those who have applied for registration or prior permission, they have to respond to queries or clarification within time online, which means that otherwise the application may be rejected and then you'll file for revision. Okay. So when you have requested for registration or prior permission, please continuously monitor for any queries or clarification which will be asked on the portal online or might come to you as an SMS alert. So you have to, every response to the query has to be within time online. Otherwise, your application may be rejected. So very important to follow what's happening to your application online. The ministry will not give you separate information. Now, the reasons for denial is of registration and renewal application. The ministry has given a press note in November 2024, and we will see the conditions and situations, the reasons for denial of renewal and registration. Then I told you the FC6E is for change in board members or key office bearers, as they call it. Now there is no, you know, here if you see they have mentioned office bearers oblique members oblique key functionaries. Now office bearers and key functionaries is all right, but members, are they referring to members of the board or members of the general body? Not very clear. But please remember that at least you have captured the board members. Now, if there is a change, even one change in the board member, you will have to file Form 6E. Earlier, more than 50% of the board members were to change, then you had to file. But now, even one addition, deletion, you have to file Form FC6E. Now, what used to happen is the ministry would not clear the FC6E. So they have given a facility where they have said that if there is a FC6E pending, then you can file another FC6E if any changes have happened subsequently, and the earlier details in the FC6E will get populated in the latest FC6E that you will file, and the earlier FC6E will be closed. So you don't have to now wait for intimation of change in board deletion addition until your earlier application is, you know, disposed of by the ministry. Okay, this please remember. So don't be under that notion that my previous application, there is, it says in the process. Now you can file a fresh 6E, and the earlier changes will automatically also get reflected in the latest 6E. Now coming to FCRA share of TDS. So you have tax deduction at source, and since we are a non-charitable institution, most likely our tax deducted at source will be refunded at the after the assessment. However, we normally give the pool account or the INR account details for purposes of refund of TDS. Now, since mixing of funds is not allowed of foreign and local, the question used to come, how do I transfer the TDS that was deducted on the FCRA portion of our funds? So the ministry has now said you can transfer the TDS amount pertaining to FCRA refund. So the TDS amount, refund amount will have both INR and FCRA. So the FCRA portion of the refund you can transfer to FCRA account, and that will not be considered as a violation because of mixing of funds. Only that situation. So you can do that. Now there is this provision relating to carry forward of unutilized allowable administrative expenditure. We know that our administrative expenditure cannot be more than 20% of our receipts. However, if the receipts come at the end of the year, we are not able to spend the money. So the administrative expenditure remains unutilized. So the government has now given us a facility that whatever is your unutilized admin expenditure in a year, you can carry it forward to the next year and utilize the unutilized administrative expenditure. Okay, so that can be utilized in the next year is a big facility that has been given, but the condition on administrative expenditure divided by total FC receipts, that condition is not changed. Similarly, the CA certification now has to also say true and fair, that the accounts are not only true and fair, but they are also in conformity with the FCRA Act and rules. So a lot of responsibility on the chartered accountants. Now there is another change, another update, uh, which says that there is a caution that has been issued by the ministry, says that if your certificate has been cancelled, it has not been renewed, or if it has ceased, then you will not utilize, neither receive nor utilize any FC funds. So a lot of organizations have been, even though they have got their this thing cancelled or their registration has got seized, they are continuing to use, because it's impossible for MHA to, monitor every FC utilization account. They can monitor FCRA account, they cannot monitor other FCRA account, and they cannot monitor FC utilization accounts. It's practically impossible. So they said, if your certificate is cancelled or ceases to exist, then you please ensure, otherwise it will be a violation and there'll be penalty for that. The last one is the one that came in April 2025. Now this is the one which refers to prior permission. Please remember, prior permission approvals will be for a period of maximum period of 3 years, and that the funds will, so the 3 years means that your proposal cannot be, or your commitment of funds cannot be for more than 3 years, and the period of utilization cannot be more than 4 years. And for PP approvals that had already been given, then the total period of utilization has been put at 3 years from the date of the issue of this particular public notice. So there is a limitation for the period of prior permission, is what I'm trying to say. 3 years in terms of grant, 4 years in terms of utilization, existing PP 3 years, and case by case extension can be granted by the ministry. Now I come to the last portion, which is reasons for rejection of registration. No activity. Organization is defunct. The activities that have been claimed are not verified on the field. Okay, no activities noticed in the last 2 3 years. Key functionaries convicted. the form is incomplete or information is concealed, that is the form number 3A or 3C. No response to clarification. Office bearers not available at the address provided in their proforma AA. Organization not existing at the given place. Registration is already cancelled, but you still filed for new registration. You cannot file for period of 3 years. Diversion of FC, anti-development work, malicious protest. Now, these are bases on which your application may be rejected. Now, very difficult to substantiate what it means. Affiliation with radical terrorist entities. Adverse inputs during field visit. So, when the registration application, there is a field visit also, as you would know. Affect social or religious harmony or forced religious conversion. Now, this is all views and decisions that the ministry will take and take a call. Very difficult to say right or wrong, but I'm only stating that these are some of the conditions that have been mentioned as reasons for denial. We have to be very careful. Registration conditions are not fulfilled. You don't have 3 years balance sheet. You don't have 15 lakhs of core expenditure. Rejection of renewal application, no FC open or spent in last 5 years. You got the registration, no spending in 5 years. No non-filing of FC4 in any one of the last 6 financial years. That's also reason for renewal. Very important to file FC4. Then if you have violated the acts and rules, those are the regulation part, restriction part, 20% administrative expenditure, discrepancy in FC4, not utilized FC for the so discrepancy in FC4 noticed. So very important to file your FC4 properly. There should be no gaps. Not utilized FC for the defined purpose. FC6A and 2E violation. You had to intimate changes. You have not done that because you don't know. Not filing audited financial state FC financials with the FC4. FC funds transferred to non-FC bank account. This is mixing. Inter-charity donation. Mixing of FC and local funds. Okay. FC funds transferred to non-FC bank. Okay. So FC money has to be kept as a separate stream and non-FC has to be kept separate. This closes my presentation. We are dot 4 minutes ahead of our scheduled time. Just look at the chat and answer your questions, and then we can take questions straight away. Will the salaries of employees directly involved in delivering, coordinating education or skilling courses to public third-party beneficiaries be excluded from administrative expenses? So you can take the benefit of the proviso to the Rule 5, which says if you are directly delivering to the welfare to the beneficiaries. In this case, what you have written is directly benefiting the beneficiaries, that can be considered as program expenditure. Can field station rents amount will be treated as program expenses? Very good question. Please remember, I want to tell you the Rule 5 says rents paid for office. Now, it does not specify whether this rent is for your office or for any specific programs or grants for which you set up a project office temporarily. My understanding is that if you are able to show that that was only for purposes of the grant, you can show that as program expenditure. 2 is director or key management staff whose most time spent on program, then cannot we treat? No. The answer is no to your second question. Third, printing of materials related to project. I think the stationary printing is what they are referring to. Program related collateral printing is program expenditure. Next question, 20% cap of administrative expenditure will apply only for admin expenditure incurred from foreign force, only from for your only out of your FC balance sheet is the 20%. आपकी consolidated balance sheet से हमें कोई मतलब नहीं है. The matlab is on the R&P statement, receipt side of your FC receipts, and on the right hand side, the utilization side of your admin expenditure to the total receipts is what we are talking as 20%. Are the program managers covered under program or administrative? Program managers, if they are in managerial position, supervisory position, that is what their contract says, that is what their action is, that is what their reporting is. Program, it's not program, it's administrative. Is it mandatory to check with donors? Even non-FC source, if you are able to see, if you are able to establish foreign source, then non-FC answer comes automatically. Whether they remitted funds FC or non-FC for non-FC accounts, they will not normally send it to non-FC accounts. The issue is it a foreign source? The money will come to an FC account because you will give the FC account to them, not the non-FC account. Why will you give non-FC account if you know the money is coming from foreign contribution? But more than that is the decision that you have to, is the decision point of foreign source, whether it is a foreign source or not. If it is not a foreign source, then you will not ask them to transfer money to your FC account. It will go to your non-NFC. Electricity charges and building maintenance for schools and childcare program, it's covered under program. If you can show that as being for delivering against a grant, I think it will be possible to reflect it as program expenditure and not admin. But if it does not benefit any program, but is for the organization as a whole, I'm afraid we will have to look at it as admin. Do we have to get letter from foreign donors, the purpose specifically? Array, if that is for a prior permission, yes. Oh, yes. So prior permission you have to. So the answer, Ramakrishna, if not specified, can we use it for any program what we run? So my idea, my clear advice here is that the FC receipts cannot be unrestricted. It has to be for a program. It The person has to receive money for a defined purpose, which is cultural, economic, educational. Now once you are delivering the purpose, you may have some administrative management cost, which is something that is unrestricted. Okay, now education, if you have, then that particular program that you will get is for a particular program for fulfilling that purpose. It cannot be for any program. It has to be for a particular program. It cannot be. But part of the money, which is your management cost, can then become your unrestricted money that you can use whichever way you want. Very important to understand that. What Form 6A has to be filed? Any due period? Munawar, uh, Form 6 has to be filed when there is a change in your key managerial positions or your office bearers. It has to be filed within 45 days of passing of resolution by your board. If foreign donor agrees to give 5% as implementation charges to the NGO, how do we utilize these funds? So you will report that in that same, so in FC, so you will get the money. You got 100 rupees and you have to spend 95 rupees. You have spent the 95 rupees. You have 5 rupees. You can report at in that particular project 5 rupees. And next year against that particular reporting, you can use it for any purpose and exhaust that money. And at the end of the year, it will become zero. Then that particular project will go out of your reporting purpose in FC4. If we construct a school building through foreign contribution and school building is in the name of the government or private party, asset is not in the name of, is this okay? Now, very difficult. I cannot answer this question because you see the money is coming for capital cost, and the capital cost has to be reported as something which is used, because that particular that money used has to get reflected in your movable immovable table, is what I want to say. Now one way of it is to show it as immovable and issue it to government. Now it's not a straight answer. I cannot give that answer right away. You can ask me, Ramakrishna, this question separately, because theoretically the FC receipts that you get, you utilize for the program and report it in FC4, and you utilize for creating capital asset, you report through the if the fixed asset schedule in the movable immovable part of clause 4. So in any case, I don't think you can not report. Now what can happen is that you can give that to the government as, as deleted from your fixed asset, but you will have to report. So when it comes to whether any fixed assets were sold to any entity, although it's not a sale, you might have to provide that with a justification that it was given to a government. The MHA may agree, may not agree. It's not a straight answer that I can give you. Anyway, I'm pushing off to questions first. Under the Form 6D, if we want to open another utilization account due to some bank issue, do we close down the current account and make a report and apply for another? So you can apply for any number of utilization account 6D. If you have an existing utilization account and you want to close it, please write after closing the account, please write to the ministry, because there's no way of reporting closure in 6D. All right. You cannot report. So better thing is to give that letter saying, get that letter from the bank saying the account is closed, attach it and send it to the MHA and have a copy put on your record along with the speed post, whatever, so that you can show it. Sale proceeds of FCRA fixed assets, do we have to depend into utilization account? You can deposit it in either of the two. Okay. Remember, your bank sometimes might say this money can be deposited only in SBI, but that's not correct. Okay. But you can deposit it in either of the two. Request clarification on the applicability post the 2020 amendment in section 7, which prohibits the transfer of foreign contribution by FCRA registered entities to any other person. Now, what is the question? Can a FCRA registered entity transfer foreign contribution to a statutory body? Okay. So, very tough one, this. A government established body that is exempt from the provision of the FCRA. So you are saying that can a regulated entity transfer FCRA to an unregulated entity? Yeah, I had told you about this. Via Form 5. Form 5 if is not applicable. What I am thinking is, uh, I will answer this on WhatsApp. So because you know what I want to tell you is this form number FC5. Listen, Kiran, I want to
Yeah, yeah,
just say,
sure.
I just want to say this to you. This the cutting point is
Mm-hmm.
uh, the non-regulated entity is a statutory body, but it must
Yep.
also be audited by CAG. If it's a statutory
Yes.
body and not regulated, not audited by CAG, again it
It,
is regulated. It is not non-regulated. Now the question is, you cannot do form FC5, it is deleted. The question that you are asking is the money that came to you as foreign contribution, can it go to a non-regulated entity? Is the question that you are asking. I will have to look at it and get back to you, because to a regulated registered um, entity, it's not there. But to a non-regulated entity as a grant, can it go, or can it go as a service contract? Is the question that can be considered. But these are non-regulated entities as long as they are set up by government and also audited by CNAG, and both conditions fulfilled. Can FC money go to them, or can FC go money go from the foreign source only? Is the question. I'll have to look
yes.
at it and get back to you.
Sure, sir. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
But so it's an intelligent question. I think the money cannot be given by you as a FCRA recipient to a non-regulated entity. But if an FCRA source from the source wants to give it to you, that will be outside of FCRA. They can get that money provided they follow the FEMA route. Do organization need minimum 3 directors to apply for FCRA? They're not necessary. Not necessary. So the question starts you are asking is actually from the point of view of, do you need 3 people? You had 2 directors. Do you not need 3 people for filing the UIN for NGO Darpan? Now there, without 3 people, you cannot complete the filing of for UIN. So I suggest whosoever is the manager should be added in addition if there are only 2 directors, or even if there are two trustees, then you will need a third person. But in FCRA, there is no such provision. What is the so this question is actually more directed towards the NGO Darpan. That is what I understand. What is the consequence of non? You see the offenses table for uh, what will happen if 45 days is over. Do we There is a penalty. Do we need to have MOU? You can go for condonation of compounding of that penalty. You can. Do we need to have MOU or agreement with FC donors? You need to have a grant agreement. Okay. So I am again wanting to tell you, for FC donors or foreign contribution donors, they can be set up as MOUs or agreements. The difference between MOU and agreement in Indian context is that MOU is generally non-financial, agreement has financial. So I don't know. The FC donors will normally do a donation letter or a grant letter. They don't call it MOU or agreement. Or rather, I will say, in the foreign countries, instead of agreement or MOU, they have called what is called as memorandum of intent or memorandum of agreement. That is what they do. But generally, FC donors do a grant letter or a donation letter. They don't call it an MOU or agreement generally. But it doesn't really matter as long as the money is coming to you uh, for the defined purpose. You are a person, it is a foreign contribution from a foreign source and for a defined purpose, blah blah whatever. Then it is whatever might be written, whether agreement, MOU, or donation letter, grant letter, it is foreign contribution. Under which the circumstances is special audit or independent audit conducted? No. So there's no answer to this question. What has been mentioned is that if the MHA has reasons to believe that there is a possibility of violation based on the documentation and reporting that has been done, then it might conduct a special audit. Okay. Uh, Please go to the charter for auditors to be able to get more handle. There is no specific thing. Sometimes you may have some bigger organization might just not get an audit. Sometimes at the for before a renewal you might get an audit. So it's very difficult. But definitely bigger organizations which get significant amount of monies as foreign contribution, they will get some audit sometime or the other. Smaller organization which might get 1 or 2 crores, it's impossible to get those audits. Anil Jadhav is asking, what is time limit to utilize the FC fund? There is no time limit. There is no time limit as long as it is through the registration route. Okay. Uh, there is no time limit as long as it is to the registration route. There is a time limit of 4 years for utilization, 3 total years now. In April, the change that has happened for prior permission. Now, the question that you are trying to ask, Anil, is can we keep the money without utilizing it? So please remember, when there is an audit or when there is an inspection, the ministry auditors do not want money to sit there in the FCRA account. Why? Because the basic concept of Fcra is that foreign contribution has been given for a defined purpose. A defined purpose has to be delivered within a certain time. Now they have prescribed this 3-4 years prior permission. They might do that same thing for, you know, uh, for normal registration and say no donor grant will be for a more than period of 3 years. So I'll suggest do not allow the water to stand there. Whatever utilization has happened, happen. You cannot give it back. If there is money still lying, then get repurposing done and utilize the money. This is for grants. This is not for corpus. So if it is corpus, then the view that the ministry is taking is that the corpus has to be liquidated and utilized, because corpus is not allowed generally in FCRA. People have a lot of corpus in FC money, but because the FC money is on end utilization basis, is the question that the corpus is being pushed to get liquidated by the FCRA department as far as corpus is concerned. You are asking a question for a normal grant. I have answered that. Rakesh, you have a question. So there is, so you asking me 360-degree questions. Is it possible? So there's the last. This is the last question that I'm taking now. Otherwise, please go on WhatsApp and ask. Is it possible to utilize the FC fund as interest-free education loan to needy students within India? Now, uh, I really don't know whether the FC uh, money is given to another individual be treated as a sub grant. An individual is a person under Fcra, and what you are giving is uh, a loan, but it can be construed as a grant. My suggestion will be that instead of giving them interest free education loan, if you can provide that as in terms of giving the money directly to the educational institution, that might be a better way of settling it. I don't know this. These are very tough questions. Whether a refundable loan can be given from Fcra, which will be refunded. So I don't know. At some point of time, the refund may be disallowed also by the bank, because what for was the money given and why is the refund there? And the revolving grant kind of concept. So we'll have to look at it. I mean, no clear answer can be given, but I suggest monies should be considered on end utilization basis rather than being parked as intermediate use or on refund basis. That is what my suggestion will be, because then it gets you into all kinds of jugglery of accounting to be able to justify that transaction. All right, I am closing this session right now. I have one question that I have from Kiran is what I'm going to look at and respond on WhatsApp. I will not be able to give an answer to this question from Anil, which says loan and then loan returnable. My one sentence answer is all FC has to be on utilization basis. Okay. This is what I would suggest. Although people are doing a lot of jugglery, but if they get caught, there can be a lot of problems. All right. I hope the session was useful for you. Uh, I have not even talked about any section or rule number except maybe at times here and there. But this session the key takeaway for this session is to give you a full view of how you would use the FCRA law on your desk is what the intent is. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week, same time, 3 o'clock. All right. Thank you very much. See you next week.